We hire people with a curiosity mindset who don't fear failure. No, that's number one thing, is if you fear failure, you will never be able to develop anything, because
that's a very good point. I mean, you have to embrace failure. You have to push the boundaries to see where you can go. If you don't, you will be stuck. And how do you, building on that, how do you foster failure? How do you encourage failure in your team?
In every single meeting, I say fail sooner. When it's in the development stage of a sample, and then there's always some naysayers who's like, oh no, we can't do this, guy. It's not going to work. It's like, how do you know? Just put it on the lab, make a prototype, and run it, and see where it fails. And if it fails, we can see if we can fix it. And if we can't, then it's a bad idea. So it's really, if you want to do anything in life, you need to fail sooner.
Welcome to Ride to Success, the podcast that takes you on a learning journey to a more productive, creative, and active life through the power of the bike. I'm your host, Pedro Couto Lopes. You can find me on LinkedIn under my own name. I'll leave a link on the show notes. And today we are joined by Marco, the director of Turbo Product Experience at Specialized. Marco is a lifelong cyclist who turned his childhood passion into a decades-long career at Specialized, leading innovation in e-bikes and product development. From racing up alpine climbs to just make it home in time for lunch, to spearheading some of the most groundbreaking e-bike projects at Specialized, Marco's story is about resilience, vision, and never letting go of the joy of riding bikes. So what's in it for you? In this episode, you will discover how to turn everyday routines like Marco's daily school commute into a training ground for resilience and growth, and what it really takes to push forward an idea when everyone around you says no, it can't be done, and why failing fast and learning on the move is a life principle you can apply anywhere and everywhere. So I invite you to stick around with us until the end. You'll not only hear how Marco and his team created products that change cycling, but also walk away with practical takeaways to help you stay creative, push through setbacks, and live more actively. So let's get into it. Welcome, Marco, to Ride to Success. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Likewise, Pedro.
So I wanted to first understand the person, you as a person that has led an interesting life and has an interesting work experience. And to first understand that, I want to go back to the basics, back to where basically almost everything started. What first drew you into the world of bikes, the world of cycling?
Yeah, you know what? It started quite early for me when I actually was born in Switzerland, in the northeast, to be a bit more precise, St. Gallen. And when I was a child, I was always attracted to bikes. And I remember the day where I got my first BMX. We were together with my parents on vacation in Italy. And back then they had quite some nice BMX bikes down there. And we got one for me. And that bike was my kind of ultimate freedom and the way into the sport. And initially I was just cruising it around our neighborhood, our small backyard, I would say. And I started jumping the first stair set, like 1 stairs, 2 stairs, 3 stairs, and, always bigger and trying to just keep on going. And then that was just kind of the style of riding I got into in the early days. And then in Switzerland, when you grow up and you live far enough away from the school, you are allowed to ride your bike to school.
Yeah, it's safe enough for it to happen.
I think so. But the rule is you have to live at least, I think, 2 kilometers away from the school. Otherwise, you have to walk. And I was one of the kids.
Interesting.
Yeah, you have to walk.
So there's a rule for how kids get to school.
Yes,
interesting.
There is a rule how kids can get to a school, and there's no school bus. We don't have school buses. People, kids walk to school. Sometimes the parents guide them or guard them, I would say. Otherwise, they're set to be free, and they leave the house and go to school and come back home on their own without a school bus, American style thingy. And if you live far away enough from school, then you're allowed to take a bicycle. And I was far enough. And riding back in, and home to school really made the difference for me. That kind of started where my competitive cyclist life started, because I was living on a mountainside and the school was at the bottom. So in the early morning, I would descend down to school, and at lunch, I had to go back up, and the same again in the afternoon. And because I was chatting with my friends and always being late to come home in time for lunch, my mom was be home when the food is warm. So I had to, sometimes pick up my pace. And that's how I got into kind of call it competitive cycling. Not that I would measure my time up the hill, but I realized I got stronger and stronger and stronger because just, commuting back and forth from school. And
so you had to commute like twice.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah, because we had to go
twice.
The same in Switzerland. There's no lunch at school, right? All the kids go either home or to some sort of homestay mom. But I was home with my parents every day. So yeah, I rode this mountain, and it's quite an incline twice a day in the morning, at lunch, and in the evening again. And whenever I want to go see my friends. So that got me into like being a bit more competitive with myself. How quickly can I go up that hill? And then I started joining a cycling club, like just class to getting into the career of racing. I was young. I was like in 5th grade when I met like a friend. We had common interests, and that was in the early 90s when mountain bikes didn't exist either. So I started racing road bikes in that cycling
so I was going to ask you what discipline you chose to go with first.
I had to choose the one which existed because mountain bike racing in the early days. I mean, I'm born in 1981. And the mountain bikes came to Europe sometimes in the 90s. I don't know the exact number. I should know. But they came after I started racing road bikes. So I started on the road, drop bar bikes, and all kinds of criteriums, and like races in Switzerland, but also racing in Germany and a bit in Liechtenstein. And so I did that for a few years. Medium successful, I would say. I realized it's actually quite an effort to be on the podium, like easily 15 to 20 hours of training rides a week, and also the time you need to relax your body. That's the hardest part as a kid. You always just want to keep on riding.
You want to do something.
You underestimate that it's actually also rest is important.
Yeah.
But I had good trainers back then, and I was okay. And then mountain bikes came around, and I started racing mountain bikes as one of those roadies who actually left the road to go mountain bike, and that was. Back then, it was easier to win because there were not so much competition in mountain bike riding. So that was kind of.
And you already had all the training from the road.
Yeah. So I took my road career onto the mountain bike and did actually end up on the podium a couple of times. And I raced all the way till early the 20s. But then I was so interested in the bicycle that I figured when it was time to do an apprenticeship in Switzerland and what do I want to be in my life, I basically studied motorcycle mechanics, and that's how I got really into this theme.
So
right?
Sorry, motorcycle mechanics.
Mechanics, yeah. I basically, it's an interesting thing in Switzerland. You have the apprenticeships where you basically you decide do you want to build furniture or fix cars and I decided to fix bikes, anything two-wheelers. And that's a 4-year, basically, educational program where you work at a bike shop, but also go to school in parallel. And you learn everything from welding a bicycle frame, but also, fixing an internal gear hub, or also electronic components such as, whatever lights and blinkers and starters and whatever these two-wheelers have.
So it sounds that it was kind of a natural progression into kind of an area that you already had an interest. It was your hobby, your day-to-day interest of riding bikes, transition into an apprenticeship. And was there ever a defining moment that you mentioned that the way you spoke about it, your experiences? It sounds like it was everything was progressive, everything was natural. But was there ever a defining moment in your teenage years that you really took stock of where you were at and like how the bike meant to you, or what winning races or training?
Yeah, I would say really the defining moment for me was when I joined that bicycle club, right? In Switzerland, to participate in racing, you need to have a license. And to get a license, you need to join a bike club, right? And those bike clubs are organized by region or by cities. And the place I grew up actually, fortunately, had a pretty good bicycle club, which had like 200 members. And they did participate all the the racing, right? They had like call it a team car, etc. They had a trainer back then, a guy who would take care of us and learn us how to also think strategically, right? Racing is not always about the strongest legs win.
Yeah, so it sounds like it was like a development
For
team,
sure.
like a junior development team with infrastructure to kind of help you to progress in the sport.
Exactly. When I have two kids, right, and we watch a bike race, and they always think the guy in the front wins the race, and I'm like, no, guys, that's not how it works. It's the guy in the draft. It's like
in road racing,
road racing, right? Mountain is a bit different, but even mountain, it's hard because if you're in the front of the race and you have to make the pace, that can wear you down too, because you're kind of pushed from behind and you might go over the edge. And once you're over the edge, you're kind of smoking yourself up, and then you end up losing, despite you could have probably won if you would have not pushed so hard.
Yeah,
so everything we learned, right? Is like pace yourself, be patient, go in the draft, don't attack too soon. The finish line is far ahead. Like sometimes you go like, oh, I'm going to accelerate for the sprint. And then you run out of juice 2 meters before the finish line. It's like, that's the wrong timing, my friend, right? So we I went through all the hard lessons, and that was fun. And I would say that was my pivoting moment in like really being like into the bike. And in the earlier days, it definitely was that commute to school, which got me just, it never sucked to be on the bike. I just still almost every day I ride. And it's been a passion of mine for ever. And then the career, how did the career come together? Hobby, the hobby meets work life. And it's just then funny how it all came together with now being specialized for 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, you've been working in the cycling industry for decades now. I mean, through that internship, was as an engineer, were there's ever like an interest in understanding how components work, how understanding how the mechanisms of a motor, the geometry of a bike works? Was there ever interest in kind of the background of how things work, rather than for me asking this question, it might sound obvious to you because you are an engineer. I'm not an engineer. So for me, I have an interest in how things work, but it's not to the level of understanding what every little cog, every little thing does on the bike. So I wouldn't say I'm a technical guy. I appreciate it, but I wouldn't spend time trying to figure out or learn it.
For us too, it's number one, right? If we don't know how it works, we don't know how to make it better. So for us to push the boundaries of what's possible, you need to understand what are the limitations of whether if it's like pushing frame weights, or whether if it's pushing motor power, battery range, etc. It's really understanding, okay, what are the limits and how can we make the product better? So it's always been for me an interest of how can we design bikes which are faster, I would say, but also in many ways I was always into making bikes safer. But that sounds weird or silly, but back in the early days of mountain bike riding, the geometries of the mountain bikes were so bad that we had way more crashes because the head tube angle was steep, the cockpit was low, seat tube angles were slack, and then wrong wheel size, I think with 26-inch baby wheels, crappy tires, crappy wheels. And often you would just crash trying to roll over like a steep little chute because your body position on the bike was wrong. So over the years, when we started developing new geometries, one main aspect for me was also making the bikes safe to ride. But as soon as you make them safe to ride, the good riders then can ride them a lot faster. And I think we came to a point where, me teaching my kids how to ride mountain bikes, you could almost let a mountain bike go without a rider and it would make its way down the hill. Almost, right? We're almost there because they're so stable the way they're designed. All you need to do is, steer and ride. The biggest mistake you can still do, for the guys who wonder, brakes, you braking. I would say 9 out of 10 crashes, people don't realize they made a brake mistake, meaning they pulled the brake levers slightly too hard, the wheels blocked, and they crashed. It's because they usually come into a situation where they don't know what to do next, and then what they do is they pull the brakes, they pull them hard, and then you crash. For me, at least, me personally, you would have probably crashed anyway at that point, but the final reason for the crash was a bit. usually involves heavy braking.
Well, yeah, I guess it's a skill that you have to master. Is you. I guess. I mean, as an inexperienced mountain bike rider, I do a little bit of it, but I wouldn't say I'm experienced in it. It's a question of skill. You need to take time to understand how the bike rides, understand the trails, how the style I can kind of take corners, take jumps and so forth. Because it's all learning process.
Exactly.
It doesn't come naturally.
Yeah. But back to the thing, figuring out how to make bikes better is definitely our job. But also just figuring out how to make them smarter, safer, easier to ride, I would say, or faster to ride. Anything involved into the future of what could a bike be different at is what we're prototyping in this building, and what we're basically doing as a job.
And I wanted to get into that in a minute, but I wanted to understand it kind of through your life experience. It sounds like cycling has shaped your life through your kind of growing up as a kid, riding to school, then racing, and kind of is a big part of your life. Has there ever been kind of a relationship between you yourself, the bike, in a more personal, kind of emotional level, where you see the bike as more than just a tool for enjoyment or something to improve constantly?
100%. No, 100%. Bike is my yoga, so to say. But now it sounds weird again because I'm going into more me as an athlete, or not. I'm not an athlete any longer, guys. But I wish.
But you enjoy riding bikes. That's okay.
What I enjoy is the connection between me and my body and the bike being able to give me this ability to ride like an incline 30 minutes climb. And the first 5 minutes I'm struggling. My head is, my brain is somewhere else where it's not supposed to be. My thoughts are not clear, and and then 5 minutes in, I'm free. Free as in my body goes into a zone where it's just me, the bike, and the mountain. There's no more bad thoughts of what could go wrong in life, what could go wrong at the job, what happens to friends and health and anything. It's just me, the bike, and the breathing, right? And then I get into the zone and I ride this 25 minutes up the hill, and other people do meditation. That's my meditation, and that's the connection I have to the bike. To get there, get out, be in the nature. The better, of course, if it's quiet and there's no noisy motorcycles and cars passing me by and leaving me in my zone I want to be. So I often choose like very remote kind of situation, remote climbs where it's really just me and the bike and the incline and my breathing. And at that point, my mind just drifts away, drifts into a zone where I think I come out way stronger because it needed that break at that point.
I mean, it's interesting to say that because, well, obviously, in living in Switzerland, you are spoiled for choice in terms of where to ride your bike in the mountains. Idyllic landscapes. But it's kind of what you touch upon is that is very important, and a lot of people will relate to that. Is the kind of riding bikes is like a moving meditation, and allows you to be in the present, being kind of have those niggling thoughts that kind of maybe don't allow you to be in the present. Once you get in the momentum and rolling, it kind of dissipates, and you just get some kind of clarity. That's kind of you start enjoy and being in the moment. And it's obviously being surrounded by mountains, by an idyllic landscape like in Switzerland, that definitely helps. I mean, there's also the kind of the added benefit of when you are surrounded by nature, when you're bathed by nature, it kind of also helps to kind of lower your heart rate, soothes a bit more the spirit, if you will.
I just think you see the world different, when you're out there. But it's not just, I've luckily specialized. I come across the planet quite well, from whether if it's me riding somewhere in China on a mountain, or in Canada or Spain, Portugal. I've been to so many places. It's always magical to just go out there and explore the world. And obviously on a bike, you can explore it quicker than, let's say, hiking.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of hiking too, and just being out there in nature. But the bike is just beautiful because it gives you the ability to go pretty fast and explore new spots and just come around and see nature. And that connection is definitely also, what makes it a really beautiful tool.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I'll vouch for that any day of the week. I wanted to kind of now transition into your role at Specialized, and you mentioned in earlier interviews that the time where you were working on the Turbo S technology, at that time when everything started, you didn't have any permissions, and you didn't have a budget. And what I'm interested from an engineering perspective and from a personal perspective is like, what gave you the courage to push forward? Like, what gave you the kind of that click or that kind of change of gear to I want to do this?
Well, yeah, because I really believe that, adding a motor to a bike, meaning a pedelec where you still need to pedal to get power, it's not a throttle, right, can really enable the sport, and a lot more people can enjoy the same sport as I enjoyed back in the day. Because between you and me, Pedro, cycling is hard. If you're unfit, whenever I come out of a winter season, and let's say I was lazy over the winter and I didn't do much training, and I come in and I do my first bigger road ride, God, that sucks, right? My body's not ready for it. And then imagine somebody who wants to join this sport, and just to get to a level where it starts being fun, you need to put in quite some work. That's where an e-bike motor helps you a lot.
Yeah.
Because then you can quickly, let's say, enjoy the momentum of moving, going kind of good pace up the hill, and enjoying both the physical fitness, but also, the joy of riding. So that's for me. Back in the day, adding a motor was pretty clear that I think this will actually enable the sport quite a bit and get more people into it.
And kind of what kind of walk me through the how did you go about proposing these to your superiors? Because I'm interested, you hear about these stories of engineers that have an idea that they propose, and is rejected by their superiors, by their directors or department. I want to know what is the story behind you starting this project.
So, initially, back then, I said like, "Oh, guys, we need to build an e-bike," and then it was rejected a couple times by the, call it, executive management, and they go like, "No, we're not building an e-bike. We're a performance cycling brand, and we stand just for the pure performance, right, of riders, and we're not adding motors." And I'm like, well, fair enough, guys. But then I kept saying that I think a motor can really add something to it, and then it's still you, but you go faster. And that's then a tagline which came around from Mike, actually came out with it, with the final "It's you, only faster" tagline, because that's the way it clicked to them at the end of the day. It's like, oh, okay, so you still need to pedal. The Americans thought like it's just throttle only, a throttle e-bike.
Right, yeah.
Guys, it's not a throttle, it's a pedal assist. You pedal, and we can make it as hard as you want for the rider to have as little motor support or more or less. We can do it all. And then the way finally it clicked with Mike is the fact that we had to make a prototype, and B, we knew that the only thing which flies with him rightfully is it needs to be fast. Fast as in like not a speed limited bike at 25 kilometers per hour. It needed to be like a fast 45, or call it 28 miles per hour fast bike. And we knew with a fast bike, we have the chances that he goes like, shit, it's fun. So what happened is we built the prototype. We flew to Morgan Hill and participated in a Specialized lunch ride. When there's a bunch of roadies and they're high testosterone, it's on a Friday. Friday is and they even had like a world champion jersey. If you would win the Friday lunch ride, you get the jersey, and then you can hang it at your office desk for the following week until somebody else takes it, or you can actually defend it. Is the right word?
Wow!
So that's how lunch rides, how serious lunch rides were. So back then we basically showed up with mechanical doping, so to say, right? And it was the time when Fabian Cancellara, people thought like on a Specialized bike he had a motor. Obviously he didn't, or not to my knowledge, he didn't. And we showed up with this pedal assist product and ended up winning the lunch ride on Friday. And obviously,
hold on. Road bikes versus a mountain bike with the
it was not a mountain bike. It was a prototype, which looked quite hilarious. It was one of my products I managed back in the day. The bike was called Cross Trail. It's a bike I started Specialized a long time ago. It's like a hybrid kind of commuter slash touring bike. And that was the first prototype we built. So it was a flat bar bike, not a drop bar bike.
Okay.
Had like some street kind of tires, 700C wheels, and the motor and the battery bolted onto it. And that thing ended up, winning the lunch ride. Obviously, also we had to be strategic about how to win it. You could not win at the finish, to earlier my point, right? How do you win a race? It's like, at this point, I knew you have to be solo at the end, because in a sprint, no chance, right? Because the guys sprint faster than the speed limit.
So you had a little team with tactics to win this lunch ride.
Attack early on a slight incline and then just keep the momentum, and people will not be able to catch you up. That was the goal. We ended up winning, and then obviously there was loads of conversation. Do they get the jersey or not? Right. We didn't get the jersey because obviously we were, mechanically doped, I would say. And then, Mike got interested in it, the founder of Specialized, and he's like, guys, this is actually fun. This is fast. This is fun. Okay. And then he's got, okay, guys, you can build one. Has to be fun, has to be fast. And that's how Turbo S came around. But then the fun thing is, the fun fact is there's no business case for that, to be honest. Back then, the L1E bikes in Europe, the one with the license plate, or the fast bikes, the sales volume, very, very limited. Because it comes with insurance, it comes with a helmet policy, etc. And in America, e-bikes didn't exist back then. So the sales volume was like, we're talking nothing for Specialized. But that was okay. It's how we got our foot into the e-bike game. And that's the first product we did, was a Turbo S. It was L1E, meaning license plate only. We launched it in Valencia. It's pretty funny. And then the tagline, "It's you, only faster," came around. And we said like it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a Specialized. And we had this advertisement where the guy riding it had a red cape, a cape like Superman.
Yeah.
It's quite so we flew 20.
Give you superpowers, eh?
It gives you superpowers. So we flew, I don't know, 30, 40 journalists to Valencia. They did not know what they're going to see at Specialized, and we had them all wear this red cape. So we had like 20 people, journalists, in Valencia on a Turbo S with a red cape on, going through the streets of Valencia, doing 45 kilometers an hour, the cape in the wind, right? So that's how Turbo S, that's how it started. And obviously from there, we had to make it a bit commercial successful. So we did some turbos, which were not just fast, but also slower variants. And then quickly pivoted into the Turbo Levo.
So before we get into the Turbo Levo, it kind of, the kind of the picture that you paint is, it seemed that you faced some first, a bit of pushback, understandable.
Yeah.
But kind of then it came to fruition. But, is kind of my question and my curiosity is, was it really that simple? I mean, was there ever a moment where during this period where you had to, also push back yourselves and, in terms of, no, this is, I think that we want to push this forward. This is there is potential here, even though it might be to start with a very small market share. Were there any, how did you handle it? Because I'd imagine you were part of a small team. And that you had to kind of manage the technicalities of it, also the financial, but also kind of managing you operating, trying to prove to the CEO, to Mike, proving to the general management that this is a feasible project, and I just wanted to understand a bit more the intricacies there.
Yeah, so the getting the yes from them was initially hard. Then with the prototype, not so difficult anymore. The way the winning the Friday lunch, right, and then having them write the prototype, convinced them enough that okay, there is something, guys, build it. And then with Mike, a yes is a yes. If he says yes, build it, then then you get the team assigned to it, like the best industrial designers of specialized, and then of course we have like quarterly check-ins with the management and have to show them our progress of how things go. But then the definition of the product was pretty clear. The design was clear. We pushed the boundaries of making it different. This was maybe the very first of its kind electric bike with an integrated battery. I don't even know who was back then out there with integrated batteries, which are easily removable, for example. So we pushed for an in-tube design in the early days of e-bikes, where everybody else had like batteries bolted on top of down tubes. We were in-tube with Turbo S. And that really made the bike special. Obviously, then making the product itself, this is super difficult. Having the communication between the battery, motor, display, the CAN bus. Back then, it was even something different. It was something called Bike Bus, which motor guys invented back then. So all of it was super, super difficult bringing it to life. Just finding all the suppliers. We had no supply chain back then. We did not.
So you had to create that as well. You have source all of that.
Yeah, I mean,
put it together, put the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, you build an e-bike and you need a charger maker. How do you find a charger maker? AliExpress, or I don't know what China sites we use, but we just went in the good old Google, like go like a charger maker in China, and then call them up and go like, guys, can you make an e-bike charger? And like literally, that's how it all came together. Is like connector makers. Okay, who could make connectors for us? Well, let's go automotive and find who makes connectors for these things. So we had to put the entire supply chain together and find the correct vendors. For example, the battery guys who did our very first battery is still the supplier of us. So we found some
long-term relationship there.
Yeah, but back for them, it was the very first e-bike battery too. Luckily, they did all the batteries for like Amazon servers and stuff like that. So they had quite some knowledge in battery packs and pack making. But we obviously had to put all that together. Same for display, same for everything.
Yeah. So how is that like? All of these, obviously that all of these processes comes with the territory of trying to create a new product that is, the company has not yet developed. So you have to create all the systems, the processes, outsource everything that needs to be done outside of your expertise. How do you manage a team to, one, motivate them, and two, get a product to be well done?
It's a good question. That's a great question. So usually the motivation comes with the product, right? So that's everybody is product nerds at Specialized. People are in love with cycling. Everybody here is in love with cycling. So the way they get motivated to keep on going is with these small iterations, small steps. You have the first prototype, which, runs on a Hemi battery, then the next one comes with a tool battery, and then so it just keeps on going, right? The team sees the progress. The hardest part is if you stuck, at one point, whenever in the development cycle you get stuck because of whatever a part not working out, then it's hard to basically unfreeze the stuck part to keep on marching forward. Otherwise, it's a pretty fluent process of motivating people with iterations. Like for us, when you have a sample, that's almost like better than birthday and Christmas together. That's like your first of its kind sample you can ride. But then, from there you put a plan together of how to get to a, B sample, which is like a tooled version, but can be still prototype tools, etc. of your product. And that's the biggest next milestone. So it's all about milestone to milestone. It's almost like, one step at a time approach. And then people are really into, seeing the progress.
Yeah, I mean, it's because obviously it's you make it tangible, or with that mindset, there is always something. Okay, well, how can you innovate? And it's ongoing. There is never I would imagine there is never an end goal. You can be the product that you started 10 years ago you're still improving it, albeit in different iterations, albeit in different forms, because it's
never ending loop. It's a never ending loop.
Yeah, exactly. There's no marker. That's it, guys. We've done our job. We can go home now. Well, once you get to that landmark or you launch a product, there is other ways of improving it.
Yes, but this landmark is definitely there in the development process, because sometimes in the development process, you have to push something into the next generation. Often ideas come up with developing something, and then we need to talk about, do we do it in this generation, or is this something we do in next generation? Because sometimes the product briefs or charters are not clearly saying, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. Often an engineer comes up with like an idea of, oh, how about this? And I go like, well, can you do it in the time we agreed? And he goes like, no, absolutely not. I'm like, well, I have a timeline. We need to deliver this bike in 2 years from now. Adding an additional year for this feature we cannot allow right now. So those are the tough decisions you have to make. Is like, okay, when do you say like, okay, this goes on to the next gen, guys? We need to stay, to the direction we set forth. But sometimes we also go like, okay, screw it, fast forward, we do it now because it's so good, right? And then you do it now, and you don't have to push it into the next gen. So often there's these conversations. But for the team, back to the guys, at the early days, obviously it was hard to motivate people to believe in the product. But once then with the prototypes and them realizing what you can do, it became easier. And then with the Turbo Levo, with the success we had, it was quite a momentum we were able to create. We like to ride them a lot because it enabled us to do more downhills or more descents, and then they got a following of people riding them. And as an product developer or engineer or anybody who creates product, the best joy of life is if you then see people on the streets, in nature, in real life, riding the product you design. And that's what I keep telling my guys in this office is, guys, when you're out there and you're like riding your road bike or whatever, your Levo, and you see 5 guys on the Levo having a great time, then remember that's the product you created. They're having a great time because of you. And that's what, for at least I would say most guys in here keeps them going forward, is like seeing people out there enjoying the products we created and enjoying life on them.
Creating a product, it's mind-boggling difficult. It's quite, one, getting it to work, then getting it to pass safety standards, then 2, getting it to market. It's just a whole ecosystem that needs to be put in place with a team with multiple expertise to deliver that. So it's not, when it's really difficult to get something well done to then be well received as well by the customer. So that's quite an achievement by itself, let alone then adding to it the innovation, creating something that hasn't been done before within the company. And what I'm interested in also kind of understanding is you mentioned kind of about the nature of wanting, kind of managing the expectations and managing timeframes for product developers and engineers, what can be done in these generation and what needs to be pushed forward to the next generation. And I wanted to understand who gets to define what the product looks like. When you are planning a product, when you're planning a new iteration of, let's say, the new motor, do you get to have like a wish list of what it needs to have, and then you set a time frame for that, or whatever it is, and work to it, or you just keep adding stuff and removing as you go?
No. Well, back in the day, it was adding and removing as we go. That was the early days of Specialized. That's how everything got done, right? It was when we had less process, I would say. But now with the company growing and with everything, I would say becoming a bit more difficult in regards to getting the product at the right time, in the right quality, at the right price into the field, it becomes more process oriented, where making a new product starts usually with a charter, with a brief. Usually, since you had a previous version, you knew already for the first 3 years of that one what you want to change and what you want to make better. So it's kind of naturally the way forward. But yeah, everything gets into words then. The bike category leaders together with the product managers, they define what the user rider experience should be. And then obviously the motor folks are defining the key value propositions of the what should the motor be. And then we need to make usually we make kind of a spider diagram of what do we rate the most important, whether if it's weight, power, noise, size, design. It's always the dilemma, right? Is design more important than engineering? And then the designer is pissed when you say engineering is more important than when you say design is more important than engineer is pissed. So it's all these, the balances between this, right? It's like figuring out what do we believe, what does our crystal ball tell us the rider of tomorrow wants to see in a new product from Specialized. That's still a kind of a crystal ball, so to say. It's like predicting the future of what we believe is the most important.
How does to touch? That's a very great analogy, crystal ball of what the future looks like. How does it, with the Specialized, you as a corporation, you invest money into research and development, into consumer research, as any big corporation needs to do. How much of that kind of budget, how much of budget is allocated to, if you will, to get a better picture from that crystal ball in understanding the future, what the future can look like?
I would say,
because obviously the future is informed by what bike riders are telling you now, and what do you think is capable to be happening in the future?
Yeah, it definitely is informed by what we call rider research. Yet you have to find the right people too. If you go out there and you talk to 8 out of 10 Levo riders, 8 will tell you the product is perfect, it doesn't need to change. And 2 might tell you an insight, like a baby insight. Hey, how about, this would be nice. And then you go like, okay, interesting thought. So it's not easy to find the people who actually challenge, I guess, the status quo. If you ask me, my iPhone is perfect right now. I don't know if I needed the camera shutter. I don't have it yet because I still have an old iPhone, but they do the same thing, right? It's like, what do the people from tomorrow really want these things to do different? But, when they change something on the UI, you can get quicker from here to there. I go like, oh, this is fucking brilliant. It saves me, a minute a day doing the task. It's like these things where you really need to do consumer research and trying to find the right people who give you feedback about, critiques and feedback about, hey guys, I think this could you have done different, and I would like this and that. So the product managers spend a lot of time in doing this. They travel, but it's also global, since Specialized is a global company. The demands are different between, I would say, sometimes call it an Italian rider and a guy in Canada. They ride slightly different. Even if it's road, mountain, or any of our categories, the goal is to have a global product and
of course,
put everything into one cycling experience, which can be quite difficult, to be honest. And
I would imagine it is quite difficult because you have multiple disciplines. But okay, let's focus just here on the e-mountain biking. You have different cultures, different riding styles, different landscapes. Like you said, someone in Italy versus someone in Canada will have different riding needs. Yet, you can't create, 10 bikes with different alterations here and there to suit particular regional kind of riding characteristics. So you need to develop something. And I think what I want to get to with this question, my next question is, as an engineering team, looking at the research hub that you have, looking at what the ride of the future can look like, I think one, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think one important characteristic is, as a team of product developers, as a team of engineers, how do you foster creativity within the team to kind of, one, stay grounded in what you want to for the future of the new iteration of the new motor, and one, what you can deliver.
So at Specialized, this comes kind of naturally because usually we ride together, or most often we go out and do our lunch rides. And then I would say 9 out of the 10 ideas, they don't happen in meeting rooms, they happen on the rides. And when we're out there, and like I said, earlier to our conversation, a free mindset, you're briefing, you're out there, you're writing the product, and we just talk along. And then, just this culture of making product better is deeply embedded into almost everybody's mindset. And then people just would, they're always free to just come speak up and go like, hey, I really think we could do this better or that better. And then if it's a meaningful thought, we put it right away onto a to-do project list and into a backlog and then pick it up with the next generation. So I'd say, and then what's interesting too is like with all these ideas coming, and it's still a small team, right? We're not a big corporate culture as you may imagine us. No, it's actually a pretty small team of individuals and a bunch of different characters coming together and creating bikes. And usually everybody's being heard. And then often the best ideas come from people who have not spent too much time on the bike, on that particular bike yet, right? Like if I find something I would like to be changed on tarmac, I send these guys a message and go like, hey guys, have you thought about this? And often they come back, it's like, yeah, we did think about this and here's the challenge and so why it can't be done like that. And I'm like, okay guys, cool. Right. At least we're on the same page with the product idea. And I understand why you couldn't do it. But yeah, it's this natural habit of, I guess it's the people we hire. We hire people with the curiosity mindset who don't fear failure. That's number one thing is if you fear failure, you will never be able to develop anything because
that's a very good point. I mean, you have to embrace failure. You have to push the boundaries to see where you can go. If you don't, you will be stuck. And how do you, building on that, how do you foster failure? How do you encourage failure in your team?
In every single meeting, I say fail sooner. When it's in the development stage of a sample, and then there's always some naysayers. It's like, oh no, we can't do this, guys. This is not going to work. It's like, how do you know? Just put it on the lab, make a prototype, and run it, and see where it fails. And if it fails, we can see if we can fix it. And if we can't, then it's a bad idea. So it's really, if you want to do anything in life, you need to fail sooner. It's whether if it's you becoming a skier or you trying to paraglide, whatever it may be. It's like if you don't try, you don't know. You just have to try. And we can talk for hours if we would fail doing it. It's like, you try, just try. And I would say we endorse people who do that, right? And that's the spirit we have. It's like, okay, we try. If we fail, we see, and maybe there's a way around it. And if not, then we really have to shelf it for now until maybe, let's say, whatever technology catches up and there's the magic material out there, which makes it uber strong that you can go with whatever baby fin wall thickness or something.
So so building on that, you mentioned about the importance of building a team, and then building a team of experts, of people that are passionate about riding bikes, people that embrace failure as a way to push forward boundaries. And how do you go about creating this team? Because this team, it doesn't happen overnight. You need to. It is a process of getting the best people to work with you or with teams that support you. So walk me through the process of how do you create a team that works cohesively?
Yeah. So at Specialized, the interviewing process is quite, I would say, special. The way we interview potential new candidates. Usually they also invited to join us for the ride at lunch because that's when most people become people. Sorry, it's hard, but it's true. In an interview room, you never get to see the real character. But when you take them for a ride, you see them usually maybe slightly, they lose up, I would say, right? They might actually become a bit more relaxed, and then you can see inside their values of what they want to achieve in life. And what we're really trying to find is like maybe we have too many alphas in the team, and we tend to hire people who have very strong opinions. But then when you have a bunch of people with opinions, it's hard, But we have a lot of people with loads of opinions. And there's always a clash then. But it's still the same thing. We interview them. We take a lot of people. An interview process at Specialized is not just, you don't meet one or two person. You usually meet the entire team. And obviously post-interview, we talk about, the do's and don'ts and what did work and what didn't work. And if we believe there is a need for a second interview or what's next, sort of that. And it's not, honestly, like, it's probably the hardest thing is building a team. When they're on board, it's still a bit chaotic, to be honest. Often it's like we throw you in the wide open ocean and see if you can swim back to mainland, sort of onboarding process. But usually,
how does that look like?
How does that look like? Usually, we hire a person who's like a self-standing personality who knows how to get things done, and then they will figure it out, right, when they're confronted with the role. But no, I mean, there's an onboarding process, but you don't get like a book of like, oh, this is how everything works, right? No, it's like you really need to figure it out yourself. But then they become the characters they need to be in the later life to be self-standing.
Well, you mentioned, we now with the I wanted to kind of bring in back now slightly to the product. You now are in the 4th generation of Turbo Levo SL or Turbo Levo, and what I want to understand is like, what is because it's constantly moving. The goalposts are constantly moving forward, and just looking at it historically, how did you saw the product development of the motor itself? Did you see it evolving to the stage that it is today? Was it like, do you think it was gone above and beyond what you thought it would be possible when you first started?
No, I wouldn't say not yet. I mean, when we first started, Turbo S was actually a rear hub motor, which was not a mid-drive motor. Was maybe right for this application, but we knew that if you want to take it into the mountain bike riding, that it's really bad if you have a lot of weight in the rear wheel, specifically in the center of the hub where it goes through your suspension. That would give you a very crappy ride feel. Not to say we actually tried it, just to make sure that our feelings were right. We tried it and it was horrible. Trying to have a mountain bike with a rear hub motor was a bad idea.
Right.
So we just still had to prove it. We did take something for a ride and
fail soon, test and learn.
Pretty hilarious that we actually still tried, but we did. So we then once and for all knew it needs to be a mid-drive in the middle of the bike, and then the hardest part back then when we started Levo was finding a motor maker who actually would sell us only the motor. Because in the early days, 2012, 13, when we started this, there were all call them system makers. They make an entire e-bike system and they want to sell the entire thing. They want to sell you the charger, the battery, the cable harness, the display, and whatever comes with the software tools, back-end related, but also application related. And we said like, no, we don't want to buy an entire system. We just want to have a motor because we think we can do everything else better, more rider specific, or at least call it with the specialized flavor. And we found the right partners, and that's how it all started, with us building turbos and finding the right partners who delivered just a part of turbo. And then the challenge was to bring it all together in what we call the system engineering department, that all these components electronically speak with each other in a CAN bus with protocols and with updatability, etc. So that was the hardest part. But back to the engine, the motor itself, in the early days, when everything felt perfect, at least in the sample stage, in the A-sample riding stages, we, for example, never really realized that those engines, because they did not have the functional safety yet implemented in the software, we never realized that they may have a thermal issue, meaning with increase of long climbs, the engines had to decrease motor power due to thermal stability of the PCB board. The classic, everybody has it, we had it, and for example, that got a lot better over time. So in the early days, the thermal stability was not something we had on the radar because it was never implemented that way. We literally would just, ride the engines to a higher temperature than maybe it was good to be. And then we changed this for the production, before the engines got into consumers' hands, we added what we call thermal derating zone, that when the PCBA board reaches like 80 degrees or something similar, I don't know what it was back in the day, that the motor power will be reduced by software to not overcook the entire unit. And that was added just right before production start. But then obviously some riders in the south, Spain or Italy, triggered this sooner than others would do in Switzerland. And that was something we had to fix over time. So our engine's perfect by now. I would say we gotten to a point where they're really, really, really good. Like they have the right requirements, because in the early days, I mean, nobody knew exactly how to write a requirements documentation for an electric mountain bike engine.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just some automotive people who thought like, do like a little steering motor with a little gearbox. And
yeah, I mean,
it was early days, in the early days. But then now we're in the fourth, respectively developing fifth generation. It definitely, requirements are clear now. We knew what failed in the early days. We knew how people used them. We finally said yes, that okay, they need to be designed to be pressure washed, etc. Because that's the reality. The reality is it's military. Yeah. It's honestly, Pedro, it's military grade. I mean, these bikes are being used. Mountain bikes are being used like you take them through war. You take them into literally a war zone on a rainy Saturday. You take them through mud potholes, river crossings. And then into the desert storm, to be honest. Some people take them into deserts, into dust, and other people take them into the snow, and other people ride them through rivers. And so it's like, it really is, sorry to say, kind of military grade, maybe the wrong word these days. But that's what we learned. Like, okay, people are using...
to sustain extreme conditions.
Most extreme conditions you can think of, e-bikes are used. Whether if it's in Arizona in the dust or in Norway in the cold. They're used everywhere globally in the harshest environmental conditions. And that was basically a come to Jesus. It's like, okay, we knew it, but then people really did it. And so we said, okay, then we need to write the requirements accordingly, that they are used like this. Not just that, we also needed to write a test plan accordingly. Then it became process, right? Then Specialized suddenly got like, okay, all right, well, if that's the use case, here's the requirements. That's the validation plan. And we started validating these e-bikes globally speaking. We have them right now. There's people in South Africa riding the bike. There's people globally speaking everywhere. We have them in the snow. We have them in the desert. We have them in the mountains, but also at sea, close to the sea, because sea salt air is really not so friendly.
Exactly. It's quite difficult.
Yeah.
Gets into the motors very easily.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand a bit as obviously technology is constantly evolving, you're constantly adapting, and you mentioned you're working now towards the Gen 5 of Turbo Levo, and it's just the normal process of things. There is a natural development of new iterations of products, but we do see kind of a more tighter competition between brands, between motors development. How do you see your product competing in a ever evolving market for the next iteration in the next 3 years?
Well, for us, it's always Specialized. We drive for a differentiated premium product. And now, what is the definition of differentiated? That's pretty simple. It's different than the others, with different ideas than the others. And premium is, what makes you premium, right? Is also a definition of what makes you premium, if it's not the differentiated part. For us, it's a brand from riders for riders. So maybe some brands, their key KPI is a large display mounted to a handlebar. For Specialized, for example, in the early days, it was a top tube display. We invented that, proudly to say, because we thought like, okay, in the early days, we would crash our Turbo Levos into trees and just mountain zones. And if a display failure breaks your entire bike, we said like, okay, we need to design the display in a way at the bike where it cannot fail. That's how top tube display started, because everything mounted to the handlebar. When you go over the bars and the bike makes a 360 spin, you snap off pretty much all the components on the handlebar. That's how and why from that day one of Turbo Levo, it had a top tube display. And now I would say every single mountain bike in the world has a top tube display. That's just one example of how we differentiate it. It gets more difficult because people just start taking basically your product ideas. Also, that's fair, everybody does that. But it's us defining what's next, right? How do we differentiate us in the future? That's the key of this team. And for I would say, it's still in the early days of electric bikes general. When you look back in the automotive world, when you go back all the way back to the first car and how it looked for the next 20 years. I mean, think about it that way, right? The first e-bike, and what it could look like in 10 years from now. So there's still, I would say, lots of improvement. Some of it comes, I would say, just with the general development of call it battery technology or motor technology, anything also electronics related. These days there's MOSFETs out of GaN and which can take higher temperatures and have less issues on the board. There's definitely the evolvement of really looking into that space too. Is how can you make engines more efficient too? Because I think most riders should be interested of how much range do you get out of a full charge. I mean, charging an e-bike is not expensive.
Requirement,
an e-bike is maybe 50 cents to charge, depending on your kilowatt price. But it's not as expensive as a car to charge. But it's still, if I have an electric assisted vehicle with a battery, I want to design it in a way that whatever I take out of the grid gives me most miles. And that's stuff we're looking into. It is how can we really uberly increase efficiency for making the planet also
with
a bit more
that,
sustainable.
there is constantly, you are constantly trying to learn or yourself discover new ways of whether it is increasing range, increasing efficiency in charging. And, that there is kind of, if you will, roadblocks that either you as a team cannot overcome because you don't have the knowledge, or you have to go and outsource that knowledge. And sometimes money can play a part in it as well, because you don't have the resources to whether buy the technology or buy the expertise into the company. And, and if we, for a moment, if we scrapped all of that, if you had access to all of the money and all of the expertise, if engineering limits didn't exist, what would be for you a dream bike or a new kind of the new possibility that you would kind of envision?
Yeah, for the dream bike, that's a good question. For me, it would definitely take I would kind of love to make it self-charge, that it basically self-sufficient off grid. You can just by going downhill, regenerative braking is as powerful that you can actually charge up your entire bike. It's hard because our body weights are too small. Now I don't want to say why it's not possible, but anything I would say regenerative charge or charge by, call it, vibration of the there's also possibilities there. Anything which gets you off the grid, that your bike can basically run thousands of miles without you needing to recharge, would be very, very cool if it really becomes kind of sustainable in that regard. That would be a super nice goal. Anything related to, call it old technology, whether if it's the tires you have to repump. One of the most hated things in my life is always pumping up my tires to the perfect level of pressure. I'm a pressure nerd. Now everybody knows it. I can only ride my pressure and nothing else. But things like that, I mean, there's already technology out there. They had it at the Paris-Roubaix, where a little dyno, a little hop pump would pump the rider's tire pressure to the perfect level, and they could, manipulate it, stuff like that. It's really making a bike which you never have to touch, or at least not for the first 5 years. It just self-sustains itself, that you can jump and ride it. Because I think
that's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Yeah, for me,
it's pushing the boundaries of what is possible, and you want to make it as easy as possible for the end user to get on their bikes and ride. And
exactly.
And also lower the entry barrier to more people to come into the sport, because if you can do that, if self-charging, self-inflating tires, or kind of ecosystem that can maintain itself for without needing an overall service for the first 5 years, that
would be massive. That would be huge, right? That would be so. Yeah, if that money, if that would be possible, that would be pretty cool. I mean, like for those in the podcast who have more than one bike, I'm sure there's listeners out there who have like 5 of them. Just the maintenance you take for the 5, you know what I mean, right? And this guy is flat, and this guy is that. This guy has that. This guy has that. And I'm a father of 2 kids, and getting us on a family bike ride is like a 45-minute prep work. Get all the suspension set up, get all the tires set up, loop the chain. All of this should be, done in a way that you don't have to do it. That any moment you want to jump on the bike, even if you haven't used the product for like 2 months, it's ready to go. Ready to go. That would be pretty cool if something like that is possible. And I think it can be, honestly speaking, because there's vehicles out there which are like this.
Mm-hmm. I would argue that I would argue that kind of the automotive industry has to a degree already achieved that level of where people can leave their car parked wherever they want, and 2 months later come back to it, start the ignition or press the start button, and it's ready to go, and you don't have to worry. So that's kind of I speak from a place of as an outsider, but what I can see and understand as a consumer is also important, because it dictates as well my choices in my future purchases. If I see a bike that is clearly differentiated from others, that allows me to spend less time prepping, less time worrying about tire pressure, chain lubrication, suspension management, that's a win-win for me.
100%. But
or
I would
battery charging, even.
To speak on behalf of the bicycle industry, we also gotten a lot. We gotten a lot better. It used to be way worse. Where your wheels constantly were not true. Where almost after every ride you had to, your tires were not so good, your wheels were not. You had to do a lot more, specifically when you use the product the way we use it, right? Like call it like full on hardcore. That way you had a lot of failures in the past. And I would say even bikes today are at a level where you can quite easily not needed to maintain them for a few weeks or months, but they still take quite some maintenance, if you ask me, compared to like the car example you take. A car, the only thing which can die on you is the starter battery. And once the starter battery dies, you're usually stuck, and you need to put in a new 12-volt supply. But for us, definitely, even on the next generation bikes for designing, we want to make it to a level that it doesn't have these issues. The easy stuff, the low-hanging fruits. Bikes always start. They don't have a starter battery issue, sort of things, right? But that's the dreams, is definitely making products which are easier to use, need way less maintenance, they're easier to set up.
Yeah, I'll be curious and intrigued to find out what is the Gen 5 will look like in a few years.
Only the crystal ball knows.
i.e. your team.
Yeah.
So it's like now gets into, bring it back to a more personal side. You've been in the industry for decades. You mentioned 20 years working at Specialized. Honestly, what keeps you excited to come to work every day?
Well, everybody in the industry helps us to be excited, right? Because we're like, it's such a small family, the industry, whether if it's the people I know from SRAM, Shimano, Fox, or RockShox components, it's a small family. These guys keep me going, keep us going, right? What excites me every day is writing new prototypes. As simple as that. That's my life. It's always about trying something new, whether it's our tire factory sending me a new set of rubber with a different compound. Is like that. It's baby stuff which can excite me beyond, or if it's a different valve stem, it can be silly things. I don't, have to undo the valve cap when I pump my tires, whatever it may be, right? It's like, it's really the momentum of making a change and trying new things is what excites me. Trying, sometimes it can be as little as a new colorway, which can excite me. It's any of it related, and then the joy of riding.
Yeah, I think it will relate. It relates to me, and I'm sure it will relate to many the people listening. Is just be able to constantly or incrementally evolve, develop, learn new things, challenging your thinking to adapt. That's what drives progress forward.
That's definitely a driver. And to be honest, one additional driver is for if anybody from Specialized listens who is still riding with us, is like, when we hire new people, sometimes we hire people who are, I would say, decent bike riders, but not super ambitious, amazing bike riders. And usually at Specialized, 5 years in, almost everybody increased their Strava times, whether it's up the hill or down the hill, by a massive amount. People get real serious when they start with Specialized. And that keeps me motivated too, not just to push my own personal boundaries, but to see colleagues who got into it. And like, we hire a bunch of triathletes most recently. It's pretty funny. And then these triathlete people, they're great bike riders, super strong people. They kick our ass like crazy. But then mountain bike riding, not their skill set, right? But then we go like, okay, how about you try mountain bike riding? And the most guys takes them a year or two, and then they become real good mountain bike riders. And just seeing that motivates me too. Taking these new people out on lunge rides, or having just most recently a colleague of mine. He's a triathlete too, or used to be. I took him over one of the baby drops. It's not a big drop in my world, but it's like a proper kind of step down. And he was afraid of this thing forever, ever. And he just followed me in and did it. And like, an achievement like that can go a long way.
Yeah.
In a work day, when you go out for a lunch ride and somebody follows you over a jump, is like, it's a pretty cool moment.
It's massive. It's like, I guess that speaks as well volumes, because it's a reflection of the culture that exists in Specialized. I'm just an observer here. I can't speak for Specialized, but what it sounds like is that that's kind of passion, it's infectious, if you will. It gets to people.
100%. And then I'm surrounded by so many amazing mountain bike riders too, who push my boundaries beyond what I think is healthy for my body. But then if I feel comfortable in following these guys over larger obstacles, then it just feels so good, like how we just with each other when it comes to riding, just push everybody. Sometimes we go out for lunch rides, and then we come back, and some guys are like way in the FTP range of like 300 watts, and that's like on a Tuesday noon. You come out, and at least for me, my old body, my Garmin reads like an NP of 270 watts on a Tuesday lunch. It's like, that's not bad. It's like, it's way far away from any professional, don't get me wrong, but for a personal achievement, it's like, oh shit, these guys pushed me beyond what I thought was possible. And that just keeps us going. It's like, A, I push the guys, and B, I'm being pushed even harder by the young kids we hire. We usually hire the, people with motivation and who want to push.
Yeah, new talent, young talent that's coming through. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I also wanted to understand, because you had such a long span in your career, is and you mentioned failure earlier on in the conversation as being such an important process of the work you do. I wanted to understand is, what is the one failure, or several, if you will, that kind of, at the time or in reflection became a stepping stone for your growth?
Well, it's anything as anything,
a professional.
Yeah, that's a simple answer. Anything which failed when the product was in production. Those are the ones which hurt me deeply, because when it fails in the product development process, like before it's approved for production, that's failure, which is part of R&D, research and development, right? You fail during the production. If you fail during production, and you're producing a bike which is handed off to riders in the field, and it fails on you, that's where all our alarm bells go on, and you go like, how could we have missed this one in our production process? Those are the mind-blowing, awakening parts of. Gladly speaking, we have less and less of those because our validation process became really mature, and we added a lot of test scenarios to before we released to production. But yet, still sometimes, a manufacturer doesn't hold tolerances of a product part, and it gets into the supply chain, and then you go like, what happened here? Why does this part fail? It was never a failure in the previous development cycle. And those are the parts where you really need to change the process, that it doesn't happen again. That you kind of we
puts a break into.
And we had a few of those in the early days of e-bikes, but not just us, everybody did, right? And those are the ones you need to solve, that they don't come back. They don't happen again. And that's why I say fail sooner in the development process. So anything which is approved for production the day you start producing mass volume, that at that point, you, at least to your best knowledge and to everybody involved in the product team, knows that we have done everything potentially possible in the time given to make the best product in the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, when those times, when those failures come, it needs to be, everyone needs to be
on deck,
hands on deck to figure out what needs to be solved, because obviously that is then your job on the line, the safety of riders on the line, and the reputation of the brand. So it's kind of 100%. It's kind of a critical moment.
Yeah, if those things happen, this is the most critical moment of and those are the ones where I can tell you specialized at its best, because then everybody globally gets involved. Whether it's the people from logistics, supply chain, rider care, big kudos to all those guys on rider care, and anybody involved in getting the solution ASAP into riders' hands. That's definitely where Specialized shines, I would say. Where we get also lots of good reviews from people as of, Specialized, they had it, but they took care of me. And that's where all hands on deck all the time. But again, my goal for us is definitely that those days don't happen, because those are the worst times for anybody involved in product creation. That's why we really spend a lot of time in the validation process, defining what the requirements, and making sure that it's clear what the product is supposed to do and how it's properly
exactly, and make sure it performs well,
validated.
And I wanted to kind of building on that, actually, this is a question I ask of all my guests. What does success look like to you?
First, you need to create a product which is, speaking to the discerning riders. That's our mantra, right? We want to have happy riders out there who buy Specialized products, and they know the reason why they buy Specialized products. So it's creating a product which actually speaks to people, that they go like, oh yeah, I want this. That's number one, because you can create a bike, if nobody has interests in it, and you created the wrong product. That could be for whatever reasons, it could be wrong colorway or wrong suspension, wrong geometry, wrong motor choice, anything related.
Yeah.
So first, success is a simple one. Let's make a product which people lust for, as in a way like they keep thinking about it if they don't buy it. That's number one, right? If you, for me, personal life, sometimes I want to buy something not bike related and I don't buy it, but it keeps bothering me in my head until I buy this thing, right? And that's how the product we want to create is like really do that people think about it, and then when they buy it, they have happiness, as in like they really use it. The worst would be a Turbo Levo, which is in a garage collecting dust. That would be pretty sad for that bike. If a rider buys something and then doesn't use it, and that's number second. Success is like, okay, the riders believe like, oh, this could really change their life. And then they realize it does change their life, so they keep using it and buy a third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation and stick to cycling. That's the number one, right? They get into cycling, love cycling, stick to cycling.
And what about for you personally? What does it mean?
If we achieve this, I see more people on bikes. And seeing more people on bikes, there's, I think there's more happier people out there, because when it does the same to them what it does to me, then I think they come home happy.
So it's a kind of it's your life's work. making
Well,
sure that
I've never been on a bike ride where people left sad. You know what I mean? Whenever I go on a group ride with a bunch of friends, we usually have a fucking, sorry, not using the effort. We have a great time. We laugh, we have fun. It's so good. Even sometimes those days where it's the worst, rain and storm and hail, but then we leave and then, it's like, God, that was good, great times. And that's what it's all about, having great times. And of course, I'm so anything related to that. Of course, I love to see more people being able to enjoy this. I mean, if it would be me, my choice would be to get everybody off the couch and off the living room into the nature and on bikes.
Yeah.
Then the world would be too crowded and probably maybe not a good idea. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah,
I think for the ones who explore it and then they stick to it and then it really changes their mindset, that's a big achievement.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, and that's I think that's one of the great kind of innovations in kind of mountain e-bikes in general, is that it lowers the entry point.
Yeah.
It opens access to more people to ride bikes
without dying on a heart rate of 180. Exactly. That's what we discussed earlier, right? It's you can still, but sometimes go like, oh, it's cheating. E-bike's cheating. But a good buddy of mine, Steve Jones, he runs one of those YouTube channels. He's like, Marco, I've never been on an e-bike ride where my heart rate was not average like 150 or something like that. And I know it's true because whenever we ride together, we push ourselves like them kids, So don't say e-bike is cheating. It's not. Or it can be. I mean, obviously it could be cheating, but anybody who starts riding it starts pushing it, and then it becomes a sport too.
Yeah, I would say that is not cheating. I mean, I've ridden mountain e-bikes in the past, and you ride it as hard or as however you want it,
exactly.
And it facilitates wherever riding style you want to have. Whether you're going down a trail, going up a mountain, it suits you, and you is very different from anywhere else. And you can ride at a leisurely place, or you can ride at a race speed. And you can do it on an e-bike. It doesn't have to be, kind of what I'm trying to say is that it opens even more the possibilities for people to jump on their bikes and ride.
Yeah, and that's the number one thing.
Without the limitations of having to, kind of don't be kind of scared of a steep incline or be scared by kind of a more rugged trail.
Exactly. The only cheating thing is not to get off the couch, right? It's like if you find excuses not to do it, and I would say with that the e-bike definitely helps you to have less excuses. And we do see that, the rider data, the research we've done is those bikes are used more than any other analog push bike, we call them, right? Those push analog bikes, it's quite a commitment to go out and ride. E-bikes are way higher retention and user rates because they're fun, and that's the beauty about them.
Exactly, yeah. And so I wanted now to bring you to a point of the podcast where, I ask you a question that was left for you by another guest that came on the podcast earlier on. And this is a tradition I started on the podcast. So every guest leaves a question to my next guest. So the question that was left for you is the following. Do you think in your life there will be a point that you give up your car only to use bikes as a mode of transport?
That's a great question. I wonder if this person knew me. It's a very interesting question. I would say potentially possible, yes, definitely. But to make that come true, I need my two kids to be old enough so they're self-sufficient as well. Because right now as a family with two kids and their hobbies they have, it just is going to be. It's possible. Nothing is impossible in life. I know it would be possible. But they're at the age where they don't fit child seats anymore nor any cargo bike. So definitely, and sometimes, if they need to go to an event further away, they both are really active in sports. So right now it would be super hard. But the future, when I get older and I probably live into a mountain village, a mountain town, and, I settle down, my car is gone 100%. but I need the infrastructure around me and the surroundings to go with it. Then I would say,
of course.
Funny that you asked the question, because I've been thinking about it and how a life like that could look like in theory. But I had it once in my life, or twice. When I was young, I lived in a city, in an old town, beautiful old town, where there was car-free zone even. And it was just, me and my bikes, that worked perfectly because everything was in the surroundings where I needed to be. Now I live on the mountains, or sorry, not on the mountains. I live kind of in the wild where nothing is nearby.
Okay. I mean, so it's I think that's one of the, you would imagine that is a necessary prerequisite is like have the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Because you already have the kind of the inclination to adopt those. I mean, it's not. I mean, there is in towns. It's easier to do that because you have the infrastructure. Everything is closer by, so you can easily move from A to B on a bike, on a cargo bike, whatever it is. But yeah, if you are further, in a isolated location, in a small village where infrastructure or amenities are not so close, it might pose a kind of a more challenge situation where you have to travel further. But it's up to the individual to decide to make that choice.
Exactly. No, I do have quite some colleagues here at Specialized who live that life, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. But they all dedicated the life to be this life, and they live exactly in these infrastructures where in the city and or nearby everything, where they don't need to travel too far or can do everything on their bikes. It's like really good to see that there's people so hardcore dedicated. I'm not yet.
Very good. So it comes to the podcast now where it's up to you to leave a question to my next guest. What question would you like to leave to them?
That's unexpected. That question. What question do I leave to your next? Do I know who your next guest is? No.
I do, but I can't tell you.
Oh God. Next question.
So you just need to bear in mind that it's all people that use the bike to lead their lives in a more productive, creative, active life. So they work in the industry, or they are sports people, or they have a passion for riding bikes. So the bike is part of their lives in some way.
Got it. Okay, well then I'm just rolling the dice. My next question would be: Do you believe all future road bikes have shorter cranks? Because it certainly feels like the trend is shorter cranks win Tour de France's.
Okay, very good.
It's a very, very specific question, but I'm trying to find that answer for myself if I should scale down in crank length for my road bike.
Right.
It's a very nerdy question. Sorry for that.
That's okay. It's I think the nature of these questions, it's kind of puts people on the spot in a more unpredictable way.
Yeah.
And sometimes the questions really are. Sometimes people are really taken aback with it because they don't know how to answer, or they really have to think about it. Well, do I even have an answer for this? But in the end, they kind of they try to.
Do you think it works, the question, or should I think of something else? I think it's really it's one of those. At least if for road riding, it could be it's quite an interesting one. The leverage.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a more kind of techie question to ask of any person. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see. We'll take that question. If it
works for you, then we keep it like that. Okay.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I never had a guest not answer the question. They have always found a way of answering the question that is asked of them. So we'll see. It's one of the beauties of this.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you, Pedro.
Yeah, thank you for your time, Marco. It's been great chatting with you and getting to know a bit more about you as a person and the work you have been doing at Specialized.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me. And then I'm off to a little bike ride now.
If this episode got you thinking about how a bike can change not just the way you move, but also the way you approach challenges in life, I'd love for you to share this episode with your friends who might need that same inspiration. And make sure to follow Ride to Success podcast wherever you listen to it, so you don't miss future stories from people who are shaping the future of cycling and beyond. So thank you for being here with me today. I can't wait to bring you along the next episode, where we'll keep exploring how the power of the bike can lead to a more creative, active, and purposeful life. Until then, keep pedaling forward, and I'll see you on the next episode of Ride to Success.